All right, good morning. So I want to welcome Sierra, Laura, Jason, MC, Erica, Anthony, and Selena to the call. It is January 2nd of 2024. What do you know? Everyone made it through to the other side. So I know it was hit and miss for some of us for a bit. However, we are here and ready to move forward and welcome the new year. For those of you that are catching this call on the recording, we do this call every month on the first and third Tuesdays of the month, and the purpose of it is to support those of you that are committed to growing, building, expanding outside of your own personal sales business and building organizations with an EXP. So that could look like, what Jason's working on, which is creating some leverage by building and growing a sales team because he's got more business and leads than he can personally handle. And that involves a hiring process that is attraction related to somebody that's in the industry already, or maybe somebody that's not, that's coming into the industry to someone like Erica that has, opened the Chico Keller Williams office way back when and grown and built an organization like that and is now here doing it in a different way here, using her influence and credibility to help agents in the way that we do here with the XP. So regardless of where you find yourself in that spectrum, this call is for that. It's for a larger conversation. And the benefit of that is if you're, brand new, have never done anything in the context of attraction, recruiting, building, growing, scaling, it's going to accelerate your learning curve. And then for those of you that do have experience with that, the benefit of being part of a larger conversation of people that are in different phases of that or going through breaking through different things, because there's always something new to break through in that area, is key. So as we jump in, I want to make sure that everyone on this call knows that at times we'll have people that are here as guest speakers. At times there'll be interviews, and we'll always have a larger collaborative conversation around what you're going through and what you'd like to walk away from today's conversation with. So I find my experience anyway is that the more engaged someone is, the more value they create for themselves. And since you've taken the time to be on the call today, I'd invite engagement so that you create maximum value for your time here. Everybody good with that? Yes. Okay. So before and while, so for those of you that have either questions or things that you want clarity on, or something that you may be stuck on that you want to create a community conversation around to break through in the context of best practices, please go ahead and put that in the chat below. And I'm going to open up the call and the conversation in something that's a little bit of a higher context just for the year. And it's something that Rick and I have done for, oh my goodness, at least the last 10 years together, and that is to set a context for the year, and specifically as it relates to this topic of growing and building. We're going to focus in on that. And so, I see people on the internet, social media, whatever, they'll be like, well, what's your word for the year? And it's some snazzy exciting thing that is, well, this is going to be my word. And everybody picks a word and it's like, yes, this is my word for the year. But what does that actually mean? And so we're going to jump in a little bit to the value of doing that and what it can bring to you personally and professionally when it's not just a word, but it becomes a context that you choose to live by for the year. And to pick a word and not have it be a context that you bring into your daily business and life, from my experience, is that you're missing out on the value of what's actually available by doing that. So I think about 2019, right? Rick's word that he found was resurgam, and that was his word for the year, and it means to rise again. And why that was, specific to him is because there was things that he had a full reset at the end of 2018, that it was 2019 was going to be his year to rise again. So everything about what he was doing in business and life was in that context. And so what that did was, when challenges or discouragement came up, it provided something to move forward into, because he's like, oh, of course there's challenges and obstacles because I'm rising again, right? You fall down, you get up. You need to have some leg strength to be able to do that. And if you don't have leg strength, well, you got to build some to be able to get yourself up off the ground, right? So in that context, that word became so important, for the year as a guide, to what was happening, right? Those of you that are on this call, many of you will be getting a little something because you're personally sponsored by us in EXP. And so when I think about the word for 2023 that I chose, it was joy. January 1st of 2023, one of like the man that I looked up to most in business and life, like really looked up to as a mentor, passed away January 1st after I'd already picked my context of joy. And I'm like, oh, shoot, this is going to be an interesting year, right? Because my context, which is my guiding light of joy, how do I use that in a situation where there's tragedy that's happening, right? And this is the power of an actual context, and picking a word that is going to be your context for the year is that knowing that the opposite things are going to always come in, right? So in Rick's context in 2019 of resurgam, as he's rising again, do you think there's things that came up that year to knock him on his butt? Absolutely, because he was committed to rising again, right? And the same thing, I picked joy for 2023. Why did I pick joy for 2023? Because I realized with all the business travel that we were doing, that as I thought about packing another suitcase and getting on another plane, energy that I had in my body was resentment. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to stay home, and I want to be at home, and I want to be working from home and looking out at the beautiful water and walking my dog in the morning. I don't want to get on another plane and go to another business event. But does that serve me for what we're creating in business and life? No. So that's how I came upon joy for 2023, which is what's the one thing that I shifted. If I had something to shift for myself, that I could take into my day-to-day experience of doing all the things that need to be done, in addition to the things that I want to do, how could I create something more powerful for myself? So joy was the word for 2023. Now, in light of all of the things that happened in 2023, including, the unexpecteds, um, of Rick passing, it was like, oh, wow, that was a really sadistic word to pick at the beginning of 2023, not knowing what was going to happen. But at the same time, it was also the greatest gift, right? Because in those most challenging times, going, wait a minute, what's my context for the year? And how do I bring joy to a situation that doesn't feel joyful? And how do I use this as something that's going to be not just an anchor, but also be a guide moving forward? And so when you start to think, and maybe you've already landed on something for you, it's like, it's really something that you commit to for the year, to use it in an application that's going to be an active application and process and practice each day, right? It's not like, 2 months from now we go, hey, what's your context? And you're like, oh gosh, what is my context? I'm not sure. I don't remember. Hold on, let me go back and check my journal. No, it's something that you actively get up, live with, work with, and commit to every day, and that it becomes a pillar that is going to support you in growing in this year. And it's a pillar that can support you personally and professionally, right? So going back to that context of joy for 2023 that I chose, how did I use that personally? Well, there was things that personally were good for us to do, like go work out with a trainer that I didn't feel like doing. It's like, okay, but my context is joy for this year. So let me put on my little joyful pants and go do that session, right? And create a different experience around it versus delay, procrastinate, complain, bleh, all the things that are possible to do when one doesn't feel like doing something. So, on that, would just love to open it up before we go any further for any questions, comments, feedback, any experience that you have around setting context and using them, and value that you found in doing that. Would love to hear from some of you.
I'll go. Last year, and some of the people that are on this call know I've got some health stuff going on. So I've got a big surgery coming up in about a week. And this last year was a pretty rocky year, and it's been this way for probably about 3 or 4 years. And so my word when we did this last year, and it sounds stupid, but it's like it was just gratitude. And I was like, but then I had to really dig into gratitude, because I think gratitude is such a cliche word. And then when you really dig into what the word gratitude is, it was exactly what you're saying. Like when you're not feeling it, like when you're having those really crummy days and you're like, okay, what can I be grateful for? There was a day when I would have given anything to be in this spot right now, right? Like, because I've got to go to meetings, or I've got to go do this, whatever this is, right? And that was something that you wished for like 3 or 4 years ago or 10 years ago, was to be in this spot. And so much of it was about having gratitude every day for where you are right now, instead of always wishing you were somewhere else or wishing you were doing something different. And so in that context, I mean, that helped me so much this year, just come back to it. And I mean, I would journal. I just had my gratitude journal where I literally, that was the only thing that it was for, was every morning I got up and I just wrote gratitude. Like, what am I grateful for today? And it was a game changer, because it's so easy to get distracted and look at what's going wrong or what's not working. And there's so much to be grateful for in every moment of every day, and all the different opportunities, whether they're challenging or positive or negative. And so it's a huge thing to have that, and just to keep going back to it. And like you said, having the like, this is my word, and I'm going to actually be really intentional about it all year long. So
I love that. The Joe Dispenza retreat I was at in December, he talks about gratitude and he defines it as the ultimate state of receivership. The ultimate state of receivership, meaning that most people think, when I have this experience, or when, this happens, I meet the love of my life, or when my business hits this level, I'm going to feel this way, versus I'm going to feel this way before I have created it, and therefore I will create it, and I will create it faster because of the energy that I get up and I live into every day. So I love that. Anyone else want to share about your experience with setting the context for the year, and any personal or professional impacts, before we jump into how does this tie into building, growing, scaling, attraction, recruiting? Because there is a very powerful tie, which we'll go to next. But before we do that, we'd love to take any other shares.
Yeah, I'll share, Casey. I haven't actually done that before. So this will be my first year setting that. I think that we get so busy in the hustle bustle. Like, we have X amount of listings and we have X amount of buyers, and it's easy to focus on that and forget about what an opportunity that we do have with EXP to grow, and to grow our downline, and to help expose other agents to a company that we obviously believe in, because we're all thriving in this industry, right? So I think that setting something like this is super important. So thank you for hosting this call, so that way I can have a better 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, going once. Don't want to cut anyone off and rob them of the opportunity. However, also, time waits for no one. Nancy, you look like the words are like right
I know they're
there.
there. Well, I have a word. So it's from a class I took. It's bold. So I have this sitting on my desk. I don't know if you can see it. It's empowerment.
Yeah.
This is a good one for me. So it's kind of like my word for the year. Willing to give and accept responsibility and the power to act. So that's kind of like, I need to get into motion and make this year the year.
I love that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite people defines responsibility as what happens next is up to me.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a card that I've had for years, but I kind of cycle them around. I have like a stack of, cards from Bold, if anyone remembers Bold, and empowerment's on the top of my stack for the year. So,
love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my word for 2024 is possibility, and it is specifically falling in love with the possibility. I'll spare you from how I landed on that word. It'll be a Facebook post that will happen at some time this week. However, I get goosebumps thinking about how it came about, because it was like, you can't make this stuff up. I was like, ah. And I was honestly thinking of not setting a context for 2024, because I felt so shitty about some of the things about 2023. Excuse my French. So I'm like, man, look at I chose joy, and look at what happened this year. And I'm like, I'm not setting a context. And then as I'm in resistance to setting a context, I have this super powerful experience of like, oh, well, there's my context for 2024, and it showed up in an animal. Crazy story. So check Facebook later in the week, and you'll learn all about. But basically, not just possibility, but falling in love with the possibility of what's actually possible. And so the meaning that I give that as I go into 2024 with that context is, so often I find myself looking at what's realistic based on what I know or have already experienced versus what's actually possible. And so because I chose possibility for the word for my context for the year for 2024 on Friday night, and this was just like, oh yes, possibility, falling in love with what's possible. We're sitting having dinner and of the restaurant that Rick and I got married in, and the owner says, I said, what was your highlight, one of your highlights in 2022? And he says, oh, I got invited to Andrea Bocelli's private residence for a private concert. And I said, what? How do you know Andrea Bocelli? And he says, well, I don't know Andrea Bocelli, but my wife and I are pretty significant contributors to his foundation. And so we received an invitation to come to his home this year for a private concert. And I was like, and he goes, and you know what happened? He goes, we got there the day before, and I texted his wife to let him know that we were in town. And she said, what? The concert starts in 2.5 hours. Where are you? And he said, I thought the concert was tomorrow. And she says, the concert at our house is tomorrow. But once a year, they have a property out in the country where there's a massive vineyard that they do. He does one major massive performance a year there. And it was starting in 2.5 hours, and it was a 2 hour drive. So she sent a helicopter to come pick them up and get them to the concert where they sat in the front row of that experience. And I'm like, that is what I'm talking about. Possibility. I would have never even, and here's somebody that's already had an experience, right? So it was an anchor to, going into 2024, like falling in love with the possibility, like what's actually possible, right? And I'm sitting at that table with my cousin who's from Clear Lake Oaks, which is the meth capital of the world, who's eating hummus for the first time, baba ganoush for the first time, tzatziki for the first time, like having her mind blown about the conversation she's experienced because it's relative to what's realistic for her in her world, right? So as I think about possibility and falling in love with the possibility, did I think I'd be at this place at this point in my life in this way? No, on so many levels, and yet here we are. So let's fall in love with what's possible and the possibility and keep going, right? So the meaning that you assign the word that you're going to choose for the year that will be your context is really important, not just to keep you grounded as the storms come, because there will be storms, but also to lift you in inspiration as you move forward to your vision and what you're creating and what you want to do there. So let's talk about this in the context of attraction building and recruiting. What do you feel the value would be in actually being in conversations with other people about what your context is for this year? And how could you use that in the context of attraction and recruiting to build relationship and help support people in their growth? And maybe, I don't know if, Sierra, you said that you've never been introduced to this concept or had this conversation before, and now you will be to have a better 2024. How many agents do you think that are out there that don't have people in their lives that are having these kind of conversations with them? And what would be the value that you could bring to someone on their journey, right? So, Sierra, what you mentioned in the context of real estate is everybody's looking at transactions, buyers, sellers, market, interest rates, all the things that make up the real estate sales business. And yet to go out and do those activities without a context or a community or a source of inspiration or a bigger conversation versus to do that within one is a totally different experience. So what are some ways that you think, like, let's say for those of you that are clear on a context that you have for the year or one that you've used in the past, what are ways that you could do and have that be an asset to the value that you bring in the conversations that you have? Let's like brainstorm some ideas. What could that look like?
I think there's a lot of ways you can do it. I mean, as a leader in your organization, I think it's such a key piece to, because you're right, these agents they're not having these conversations. A lot of them are not, if they're new, I mean, depending on what company they were at, a lot of them have never been exposed to different things. So I think just even opening up the conversation to, create like even a small little workshop or something like that, where we're talking about something other than like, here's what here's how many listings, how many buyers, and like the gal was just saying, there's so many of them are just focused on that. and they're not looking at their big picture of like, how do you change your habits and how do you change your systems? And I think that allows us as the leaders of these organizations to really shine and be able to make those differences. So I mean, it could be just, creating a 2-hour workshop or something like that for people, and invite people from outside of your organization. I do that all the time with our board of realtors, and I always have probably 80% of the room is people that are not in my organization, and it's just free. I'm like, hey, I'm just bringing value. That's my whole goal, is just bring value, bring value, bring value. And then that allows you to have that conversation with them when they are ready to make the move.
Very cool. So yeah, creating like I mean, it could be a 1 hour Zoom, it could be a 2 hour in-person workshop, like, as a way to create an event and a touch to add value. And it could be, something just as simple as the impact of having a clear context for your business business and life for 2024 versus not. Come learn how to get one. It can be something that straightforward, right? What's another way that it could be used? So for an event, yeah, what else? Here's a really simple one. If I reach out to Nancy, thinking about you, quick question, what's your context for this year? What do you mean? You mean my word for the year? No, your context. What's your context for this year? And in the asking of a question, it will reveal a void or a gap if there is one. And if for some reason somebody has a context that they're clear on, oh my God, that's amazing. It's empowerment. Tell me about that. How do you plan on using it in your business and life this year? And now you're in a conversation that is, these are the relationship building value add pieces when someone takes the time to have a conversation that's different than anyone else is going to be having with them. And where could that conversation roll into? Oh my goodness, I thought of you because I was just in a conversation that was a collaboration of people that were coming together and talking about their contexts for the year and the impact of that for our business, individually and then collectively and how we work together. And well, what do you mean? What is this group? I mean, there's just so many different pieces, right? Well, how do I get in that conversation? And having things come about organically because you're in a different conversation than everyone else, out there is having. So we could do the direct approach, which I love, which is that just, hey, Jason, what's your context for this year? I see you at an open house, or, I'm reaching out, was thinking about you, was in a conversation with some incredible, agents that I work together with, and you crossed my mind because XYZ, and we were in this really inspiring conversation. I just wondered, what's your context for this year, for your business and for your life?
Casey,
Yeah.
what I took from this was it shows that you have depth, right? When I think back about this time of the year, as a realtor everywhere else, and the only conversations, the only thing everybody's talking about is how many homes you're going to sell this year, right? Like you sold 20 last year. To stay relevant this year, you got to sell 25. And that can be overwhelming, especially when you think about the hard work it took to do the 20. Now I got to come back and do the same damn thing, and I got to do it more and even more intense. That conversation kind of breaks it up for me and lets me know that there's more out there, and it starts a deeper conversation. It also shows me that maybe I don't have the vision, but now I can latch on to your vision. And yeah, what's your word? What does that mean? You know what that means? I can identify with that, and I think it opens up to deeper conversations.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing, right? How many people are setting New Year's resolutions? How many people are setting goals right now? Those are the things that people are talking about, and those are common this time of the year. However, within our community, we're having a little bit of a different conversation. And yes, those things will happen and be part of the conversation at some point. But the bigger piece of the conversation is what your context is going to be for this year, and what is it? here's mine and here's why. What's yours? And would it be valuable to, grab coffee for 30 minutes and talk about, or, explore one that would be a match for you and my experience with it? And, if you're having that conversation with someone in January, and like I know Nancy's context now is empowerment for the year. Every time I talk to Nancy throughout the year, I can, as a follow-up, that's a natural part of the conversation that's investing that relation, is tell me about the experience you're having with empowerment being your context this year. What's the impact it's having in your business year to date? How's that showed up for you personally? And what have you been able to overcome or break through, or are you in the process of doing as a result of that being your context for this year? So, I mean, when you think about, oh, what am I going to say to follow up? Or am I throwing them in a CRM so that they're getting emails and announcements, which is, perceived value, but maybe it's only valuable if the recipient feels that it's valuable. Right. So sometimes we do things that we feel will be valuable because it's the things that we do. And unless it is received and perceived as value from the person that's getting it, that and only then is when it is valuable. It's kind of like a buyer decides how much a house is worth based on what they're going to pay for it, right? They decide the value of the house based on what they're going to offer, and that's how it sells. So in this context, like, wow, what if January became a month of outreach of like, man, we're in a new year, and that can mean so many things, but oftentimes what it means for people that are in our industry is we're looking at last year's numbers and goals and what we wanted to create versus where we landed, and then looking at this year. And sometimes that can be energizing and exciting, sometimes that can be overwhelming. And so we decided to change the conversation this year, and here's how we're changing it. We're talking about something that's going to impact all of that, but do it in a different way. And that's the context that we're going to have for the year. And have you been introduced to that idea before? Is it something that you already do? Or is it a new concept or a new idea to you? Right. And think about now, like, okay, all the transactions that you did in 2022, being able to circle back to those agents, and this is just one example of being able to do that, and just say, hey, listen, as we're starting the new year, I was looking at 2022, what worked, what could be improved. I thought about the transaction that we did together and my experience with you. And then also that this industry could be kind of lonely as an agent at times. And so I was just part of this mastermind and this collaborative conversation. And I thought of you because I liked working with you. You had great energy, and we're in the same game that can be very lonely sometimes. But I'm really energized because we were having a conversation about how to make it different this year, and the power of how having a clear context could do that. Is that something you do already? Set a context for the year. And, if so, I'd love to hear your experience with it. If not, I'd love to share with you about what it could mean for you. Are you open to that? All right, let's grab coffee. Or, let's grab a call for 30 minutes. It can be whatever you want it to be. It's ways to open up a conversation. Same thing. Now we're looking at, for those of you that have organizations or agents you're working with, a retention conversation. Right. So when I look at our organization, there's, thousands of agents. A lot of them I don't know because they're connected and in deeper parts of our organization. However, for the ones that I do know and that I do have relationships with, to be able to create a deeper connection and know, if they are not here on this call or not being exposed to this concept or ideas because they're not plugging in on the recording, that in a one-on-one conversation, that is a quick touch, right? Like, what if we just did this one thing this year differently than you've done in years past? And now, monthly, we've got to check in on how's your context going. And it could be just a quick text. Like, what are you breaking through as a result of choosing that for your context this year? Or what do you that's coming up as a result of you choosing that for your context this year, right? So in October, when my context is joy, it would have been amazing to get a call from someone that knew my context was joy and was like, how are you using your context to support you during this really challenging time? Oh my gosh, where am I not choosing joy that I could choose joy, right? In a really sad situation, not to dishonor the sadness of it, but to also not get lost in the sadness of it and realize that there is joy to be found and joy to be had still, right? Oh, I got to see my grandson. I got to see my grandson today. I'm going to see him tomorrow. Like, And oh, I found this video of my grandson with, you know, sitting in the front seat of Rick's car with Rick talking to him, like joy, right? It's a time stamped, marked forever. Sadness, yes, but also joy, right? So the power of being able to actively use the context and have that. And what if we all did that one thing with the people that we're in business with already? Right. So for me, I'm thinking like a lot of times things come to me as I'm in conversation about them, is that what I'm going to have up in my office, in my working space, is all the people that I've been in communication with individually within our organization, and finding out what their context is going to be should they choose to set one for the year, so that I know that, and every time that we speak, that I have an opportunity to check in on that, right? And we have an opportunity to have a larger conversation together, right? So that's one thing that I'll be doing this year, in how to use not just my personal context, but also using that in the supporting and nourishing from a leadership perspective. So questions, comments, thoughts? Because there must be things rumbling around in there. I can see them. All right, who's clear on what their context is for this year already? Would it be valuable to create a space and a separate Zoom call outside of this on how to get clear on finding a context for the year? Something that you could invite other people to, as well as participating yourself? Yeah. MC sound isn't working, but she says she is loving this idea of context. Okay, so go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I showed up late to the call, but sorry, I'm getting over a cold. But I showed up late to the call. My one word for the year is soar. So I'd like to apply soar as my context for the year. And what that means to me is showing up as the highest version of myself in every area possible. So I take a step back and say, if I want to soar and I want to soar high like an eagle, like what would the highest version of myself do in that situation? Would the highest version of myself go to bed early so I can get up early and work out in the morning? Would the highest version of myself make 10 extra calls, or would I call it quit when I hit my goal for the day, when I make my minimums, my maximums? So I'm a little late to the conversation, but I think is that in line with what you were talking about?
Yeah, it totally is. And using that as a contextual filter that you go into every day with, so that in the most effective times in my life, at the end of the day, I look at the end of the day and I'm like, okay, what did I do today that was really effective? And where are the areas today that I want to improve? And I get clear on those things before I go to bed. And I go to bed and it's a bookend to the day. The day is complete. So I don't wake up the next day in the feelings of what was the day before, because it's already complete and I'm already clear. Like, here's what I'm doing that's really effective. And here is what I already know that is going to be in solution about and work on, you know, better for today, and then go into the day with that, right? Your context is sore, you do those same things in those areas. At the end of the day, it's not a judgment, not a place for like judging or beating yourself up, or oh, I'm such a, you know, this or that. It's like, no, just it's a very neutral conversation. It is an inventory conversation of, based on my, you know, my context being sore, where are all the areas today that I showed up at the highest version of myself? Because what you acknowledge about yourself is energy, and where you put your energy and where you put your attention and where you put your focus, it expands, right? And then the same thing is true on, okay, what are areas that I could improve or have a, you know, addressed differently, that I will address differently moving forward. Right. So, I mean, I have a great example of that yesterday. There was a situation that came up for me, and it was, I will admit, I had some intense, you know, feelings, and I wrote what I thought was like a professional email, and then I read it before I hit send, and I'm like, this is a really good email. And then I thought about the recipient on the other end and what I knew about that person, and then I thought about having what I said in the email and all the different ways it could be taken. And then I decided not to send the email, and I picked up the phone and I had a conversation. that I was very proud of how I navigated that conversation neutrally, and I did not get roped into any of the emotions that were bubbling underneath the surface. I'm like, you know what? If I had to go back and have that conversation again, there's not one thing I would have done different, right? So as I look at that, it was going through the filter of possibility, and if anything is possible, what do I want to create in this situation? I want to leave it better than I found it, even though in the moment I just wanted to blow it up because of how irritated I was. Right? So the power of, yes, having something like SOAR where you're going to show up as the best version of yourself in that moment. Exactly. My girlfriend, well, some of you know her. She wrote the book Bridging the Gap. It was in 2022, New York Times bestseller, Forbes and Wall Street Journal top 3 business books to read for the year. There's a book on communication. Her name's Jennifer Edwards, and her context for this year is radical presence. And so we were having this conversation because she always picks context for the year as well. And she said, I don't know what it is. She goes, but because she works with people and is so present all the time, she's like, and then there's like these other times she's like, there was a situation with her brother-in-law who really just is, can be bothersome. And he was wanting her attention to show her something about what was important to him. And she just like, she physically showed up, but mentally checked out. And energetically that created an experience, right? Because everyone that was standing there knew that she was mentally checked out, though she was physically present. And she left that situation, that conversation, had a level of awareness that that's how she had shown up. She went back and revisited the conversation and asked from a place of curiosity what he was wanting to show her, and became neutral and actually did get present and listen. And so as we were having the conversation, she's like, God, I'm so good when I'm on stage and I'm in front of people, and I'm present and I'm effective with people. Or if I'm in a coaching situation where I'm in a, one-on-one conversation, I'm like really present and I'm effective with people. And she's like, and then there's these other areas in my life where I just don't, and it's not, the impact, I'm missing an opportunity to show up the way that I want to show up. And so, she was like wrestling with what it was. And so as I was listening to all these different scenarios that she was talking about, I'm like, well, she was talking about, focusing on the importance of the little things. And what I heard her say that was a higher context was it's really about being radically present. Because in being radically present moment by moment, I'm not going to check out and show up as an ineffective version of myself. I'm going to be like so radically present that even if I have something else going on inside in that moment, I'm going to choose to show up in a way that is going to serve the situation and reflective of who I really am or am working to become, right? If we're in this context of growing and improving, right? So radical presence is her context for this year. So it sounds like it would be valuable to have something to invite to that would be an extra. Always, managing standards and extras. So our standards are the first and third Tuesdays of the month as a conversation around building, and this would just be more neutral around the value of choosing a context, how to choose a context, how to land on that, and what the actual process is. Because it's easy to go into, well, I like these 15 words and I resonate with all of them, so I'm going to pick my top 3, and that dilutes the power and the possibility of what's available. Now, that being said, one of the things that we did, Rick would always have his own individually. So for those of you that are in relationships, Rick would have his context that he would choose. So last year his was prioritize. I had mine, which was joy. And then we had ours together as a couple, which was flourish, which was, to blossom in a set of the most favorable circumstances. So this is also something to think about, and another layer just to walk away from this call knowing that we'll put another one in place that can be a larger conversation of, are you in a relationship with somebody else? The value of them having their own individual one, because everybody's on their own individual journey, and then the opportunity to create a context as a couple so that collectively you're coming together in a larger conversation for your family and what that will be what that will be for the year. So that is another layer of context setting that we did as well that we found was like really, really incredible and something to come back to, right? Because as we're making decisions, is it's going to support us flourishing or not, right? And do we choose to do that or do we not? Is it aligned with the context that we have for the year? So with that, yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to talk about, last year we did this, and last year was kind of the first year that I ever done this, and I imagine a lot of you guys on this call, if you were around, was the first year you did it. But last year, mine was just thinking back, mine was grow. And when now we can step aside and take an account of what we did last year. And guys, I'm a huge introvert. And last year mine was grow. And that's exactly what I did. I stepped on big stages and spoke in front of a lot of people and really got outside of my comfort zone and left the house. Like, I don't like leaving the house. And I think it that was valuable, because at the end of the day, I had to ask myself, is this helping me grow? So every time I got asked to do something, guess what? I said yes, because I knew it would add to my growth. So that was last year. And this year, I think for me, it's really family first, because that took me away from my family a lot. But every time I do something, I'm asking, is this benefiting my family? Also, my organization, I'm treating them like, my family. Like, if this was your family member, would you tell them the truth, or would you let them continue to travel on the path that they're traveling? So I'm just being unfiltered and real, and supporting people like they were my family, and just showing up for them in that form and fashion.
I love that. So you actively lived into the word that you had for last year. And then tell me, so there's just something that's coming up as you say family first, right? So on the business context, I hear that, seeing that in your organization. And then so you have a personal and you have a business context, with family first being the overarching thing. So one of the ways, and this gets into that, is backing into it, is what is, with the context being family first, I hear what the objective is for you in your personal life, right? Which is having your family be first. And so if we fast forward to the end of 2024 with family first in a business context, how do you see that being a context that's going to serve what you want to create in the business? So this is where you align the goals that you have for the year
Mm-hmm.
with what you're doing in business, and how that context is going to serve that objective.
Yeah. So, March will be my third year doing this. And the first 2 years, I noticed that people would just come and go and leave because there was no ties. This year, my goal has really been on community. So creating a family. The real estate part is easy, but it's the community. People won't leave the community. People want community. I think that's the piece that they think that they're not going to get with EXP. And I think that's the piece that if we could master that or get better at that, people won't leave. People will grow, people will flourish. Once you develop a community, within that community, little cliques and all these other things start to formulate, and they support each other. So just creating that family atmosphere, you create all these little groups within, and then those groups start to grow. Like, so you essentially start little branches within your organization when you create that family environment.
So the higher context of what I'm hearing in a business context for that is retention. Because think about families that are dysfunctional and fight, right? Right? So family first, it could be like, we're all in the pot together, right? However, your intention behind family first is really about community that then drives retention. And if we go to like one higher context of what retention would be, what would be a context that sits above or is in a higher context than retention?
Wouldn't it be growth? No?
Could be. I don't have the answer. I'm asking the question. Because there's different layers of context, right? And when you get to the highest context that everything else can sit underneath, that's part of the process of landing on it, for yourself.
I think I don't know how to put this, but it's like belonging. That's what kind of comes to mind, right? I think a lot of people um they feel like they don't belong, there's no connection, but I think above that is like I belong here. Like this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where I thrive. I can get comfortable, let down my guard, and then I can truly grow and participate because I belong here, you know?
Mm-hmm. You said the word that I was thinking was the higher context, which is thrive. So, what does it take for somebody to be able to thrive? They've got to feel like they belong. In order for them to feel like they belong, they've got to be in a community and like all of the things that go with that, which feels like a family, which is the connection of people having a place that they sit within all of that, right? So I'm not saying change the context that you've set. All I'm saying is just be really clear on what that means to you when you're saying it and when you're communicating it to people, because it's not the thing that you said the first time. The thing that you said the first time about family first was being transparent and honest and open with people like you would in a family, within an organization, of working with them in that way. And then what you said the second time was a little bit different, right? And so this is like when you're looking at what your context is that you're going to choose, getting clear on what the highest context is of that, so that as you are communicating that to people and are sharing that with people, oh, it's really crystal clear. So let's say you stick with family first. My context for the year is family first, and what that means to me in my personal life is that all of the decisions that I make are going to be with my family being at the forefront and the priority of that first, not second, first. What that means for me in a business context is that the people that I'm working with are thriving, that are in our organization, and they're thriving because they feel like they belong and they're connected to a larger community where they really want to be and stay and grow and thrive. Right. So the language that you put and the meaning that you assign to the context that you're going to choose is going to be the power that it has to execute the outcome that you're looking to create by, as a result of choosing that for the year. Does that help?
No, that was spot on. That helped.
Okay. Cool. So, this is so fun. I love going through this process because sometimes people end up changing what that context is going to be because maybe it doesn't actually fit what they're going for that year, right? And the energy that they feel that they're going to want to be in and work towards for that year. But imagine now the individual conversations and how meaningful they can become if we go back to this context of building, growing, scaling an organization of people that aren't yet with us in this community because they're not with the XP. And you can see just by virtue of this conversation that we've had, like if you're having these kind of conversations with people or willing to go to have those kind of conversations with people, and not just an interest in the business context for them, but also how their context is going to play out personally and what that will mean for them. Now you're really helping people in the totality of what's available, mind, body, spirit, soul, personally, professionally, like all of the things that come together. And this is a way to create a distinction of what it would be like. Now think about these conversations where there may be multiple people that are EXP agents that are attempting to prospect the same person, right? And how do you set yourself apart and be in a different conversation such that, well, what am I going to get for coming to your organization? Well, we're going to pay for you to no, we're not. right? You go out and you demonstrate a different experience, demonstrate a different conversation with people that is oh, I don't need to ask what's going to be different because nobody else that I've talked to has had this conversation with me, right? Oh, yeah, do we have all the stuff? The assets, the training, the support. Yeah, we've got all that stuff. But more importantly, we're in a larger conversation about you and your life and your future. And immediately come out of the gate with what you're talking about, Will, which is that belonging in that community, for someone to know that, man, in this place, I'm going to be able to get and achieve everything that I want to get and achieve, not just professionally, but also personally. I love it. Well, thank you guys for being on the call today. We've got a few minutes before we're at the top of the hour. So if there's anything that's kind of come up for any of you since we've been chatting that you wanted to share or you feel would be of value or ask before we close it out, I'll create a space for that to happen.
I want to give, I guess, some advice for everybody. Make the video, make the post. I keep talking about it, guys, but I made a video of why I left Keller Williams, and the video is still exploding. I'm getting 2 to 3 agents a week. I just had a top producer sign up over the weekend from the freaking video. So make the video. It's a video I made in March of last year. I was on vacation. I literally sat, my wife and kids went down to the pool. I said, I'm gonna sit here and make a video. I made a video on vacation with the beach behind me and literally just talked about, why I left Keller Williams. And the video, again, is just paying dividends. So next week, I'm going to take the time to put on a professional video and really put some money behind it, production and stuff, because I could have never imagined one video would have done what it's doing.
And there's a couple of things about what you said about that. It's on YouTube, right?
Yep.
Yeah. To answer Nancy's question. Or MC's question, why I left. It's that whole thing of when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing, people will change, right? So in just even what you said about the video, why I left, people don't leave because of pleasure. They generally leave because of pain. And so now you've created a curiosity, not on why I went to EXP, why I left, right? Which is brilliant, actually, if you're thinking about what reels people in to get eyeballs and attention. And I think so often, like when we overthink things, it's like, oh, well, how can I be so inspiring about what's possible for people and blah, 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 and talk about that within it. But that's not what's going to grab people. And you're seeing that based on your experience of what you did there. It's this why did he leave, right? People don't, it's not even a where I went, well, why did he leave? This is so interesting. It's like, I know a million people that are there. Why did he leave? Right. So brilliant and simple and powerful all at the same time. So thank you for that. All right. Well, we will have this recording posted in the playlist that we have on YouTube that can be found at empirebuilders.pro/resources, along with all of the other recordings. Selena and I in the background will work on a date and time to do a 1-hour Zoom on the value of creating a context. Somebody had a question on how long should you take to choose one. There's not an answer on that. However, I always look at like, oh, it's January 2nd already. We're into 2024 and it's already the 2nd, so like today would be good. And so we'll make sure that that resource is out within we'll see the soonest that we can do it to have people in that conversation, so that you're not in the middle of January or at the end of January in your year without a clear context that you're living into each day to support you in your business and your life. So appreciate each and every one of you. Big love and hugs from the Monterey Peninsula into wherever you're respectively all sitting, which I know is all different places around the world. And this Friday coaching call, Michelle Sayward, who is incredible. She spoke, where did she speak? She spoke at EXPCon. She's a former coaching client of mine that she hired me for recruiting and building. She's got an organization of over 1,500 agents now today. And she is unbelievable. She's run a real estate sales team, was doing over 100 transactions personally by herself a year. So she knows the agent game and she knows the building game. And she's going to be doing the free Friday coaching call this Friday on how to set yourself up for a great year. You'll see the promotional materials for that are on the Empire Builders Pro Facebook group. So if that's something that you want to grab, she's got her photo on it, date and time, and all the details for the call this Friday. Again, that's a company agnostic call. So we won't be talking EXP on that call. But another thing that you have for value to be able to invite people into that you're in conversations with this week. So make it a great week, and we'll see you on Friday or talk to you if not before. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.